Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, a.k.a. PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative Podcast. This is the podcast where we have digital discussions, the worlds of pop culture, social media, sports, hockey. As always, I'm your host, Peter Meliodas. On Twitter, I go as PD Beats. Well, it is September, and although a lot of people are waiting for October for the NHL, for junior hockey fans, the OHL is right around the corner. And here with us is the owner of the Oshawa Generals in the Ontario Hockey League, Rocco Tullio. Rocco, welcome to Popternative.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Appreciate it.
No problem. So how has the summer been? How's the off season been?
It's been good. It's been extremely busy for us. Summer was short, to be honest. I can't believe how it's flown by, but it's great to be back in hockey. It was a little bit of a lull there. There's nothing to do, so it's great to be back.
Let's talk a little bit about you. What made you decide that you wanted to go into like hockey operations and be involved with junior hockey specifically growing up?
Well, you know what? When I was a young lad, I was passionate about the game of hockey, and unfortunately, the timing wasn't great for our family to get into the travel aspects of hockey. And so I've always loved it. I've always been passionate about it. And about 12 years ago, I started. I said I wanted to get involved in hockey at some level. If I couldn't play it, I wanted to get back, and so we started looking at OHL teams, and we ended up coming across the Oshawa Generals, which has been great.
Absolutely. So what I find really interesting about the CHL, well, OHL, but CHL in general, is that this is a league that these are kids that are learning every day, getting bigger, better, stronger. But what the league, it's like a pro setting, so these kids have to come in at a young age, basically, and deal with community engagement. They have to deal with the media. They have to deal with big crowds. What is the advice that you give to players that are coming to the OHL for the first time that have to kind of deal with all of that?
Well, you're 100% right. There is a transitional period. At the end of the day, we try to make these kids understand that the game doesn't change. It's, you've been playing this since you were 4 years old. The only difference is, you're playing against bigger and faster players. And, and in terms of the fans, I think most of these kids have played in situations where, they've been around large groups or large bodies of fans, whether they played at the Brick or whether they played at the OHL Cup or, they played in championship games. I think they've acclimated themselves over the years to that. So we just tell them to go out really and just have a good time and play the game the way they were born to raised to play it. When
you see these players come to development camp and play in exhibition games and play in, tune-up games, what are some of the things that you've noticed in the past couple of years with hockey players in terms of the progression of their games? Is it overall getting just faster all around? Is it getting bigger? Like, what are you noticing from these players?
Well, the skill set and the hockey IQ of players in today's day and age has exponentially increased. I think, the Hockey Canada and Hockey USA have taken the small area games so that kids have more touches. So, it's about skill development. And you look even in Europe and a lot of these things, it's about skill development, touches with the puck and all that. So you're seeing a lot more of these kids with high-end skill. And then the ones that really separate themselves from the pack are the ones that can really think and process the game quickly and at a high level. Those are really the elite kids. But the game has gotten faster. You got to be able to skate, you got to be able to make plays, and you got to be able to process the game quickly. And usually, for young kids, it's getting acclimated because they're 16-year-old men playing against, for the most part, 18, 19, 20-year-old men. And that 2 or 3 year difference makes a huge difference in our league. But I think for the most part, if you can really think the game, then the transition to the OHL is a little bit easier for some than others.
Absolutely. Let's talk specifically about the Oshawa Generals. Let's talk about some returning players, and we'll get into some new players. But some returning players: Sarah Noel, Alan McShane got drafted in the National Hockey League. Noel to the Panthers, McShane to the Montreal Canadiens. Those are two players that were impact players last season. What should we expect from these players this season for the Oshawa Generals?
Well, it's another year for them. So these kids have gotten bigger, stronger, and faster. Both of them are tremendous human beings off the ice. I can't say enough great things about them off the ice and being good role models. They're both different players. I mean, Saren's is a big power forward that can dominate a game with his speed and his skill and his hockey IQ. Shaner is more of a kid, more methodical thinking. He's a first pass guy and elite thinker on the ice. And he's been one of the better players at our camp this year. He's got himself into great shape, and things are starting. He's a year older, so he's a year older with strength too. So those two we're expecting to have big years from and to pick up where they left off.
Absolutely. A few new signings. Actually, two signings from my area, from the Ottawa area. Matthew Franche, big defenseman, big guy on the blue line, was just signed by the Generals, and Danik Drouin from Castleman. Talk a little bit about those players, and if there are other players too that we didn't mention that are coming into the group this year.
Franche came on board and earned his spot in this organization. We tried to sign him a couple of years ago, and they wanted some time to continue developing. And he came into this camp and was a physical presence, made great plays. He's this big body that can skate, but he's nasty on the back end, and he's a right-hand shot. So for us, that was we only had one right shot on the back end, and that was Broussard. So it was great to be able to add that. It was a surprise for us, and a great acquisition, and he's acclimating himself extremely well. Drew's on the other hand, another great a kid that came into camp last year, opened up some eyes, and then this year the way he thinks the game was really impressive. He plays with he competes. He's got skill, and again another player that basically wowed us in camp and won himself a spot on this roster. So we're expecting some big things from those kids.
So I find that interesting because, the camp is a small period of time, you know what I mean? They're there for a few days or a few weeks, and you get to see them there. But talk a little bit about the overall kind of scouting, because you mentioned, you see these players throughout the year. Talk about the differences between kind of seeing them at camp, but also kind of keeping an eye where they're playing in midget and Bantam, because that's also important as well. But how do you balance the two?
Well, our scouts are at the rinks endlessly, and it's body of work. That's the reality. I mean, these kids, they're on the radar, but it's through body of work on watching their progression over the year. So when they come into this camp, you see how they are against the bigger kids and the older kids, and if they're continuing to make plays against them and having success, then for the most part, you've got a pretty good player on your hands. So, but for the most part, it's our scouts that watch these guys day in and day out at different tournaments and different scenarios. And people can say scouting is a difficult task because it's an opinionated assessment of a player, but you have to take a lot of things into account. Is he dominating at that level because he's bigger, stronger, faster than everybody else, and he just he's dominating? So you got to take those things into effect. Or is he dominating because he's bigger, faster, and stronger, but also smarter than everybody else, right? And or is he undersized now but having a lot of success? And what happens when he gains size? Is he going to have even more success? So those are the things that really great scouts and our scouts have done over the years, is they've been able to pick apart a player's game and not get wowed enamored with certain qualities. The biggest things we look for is we look for compete. We look for hockey IQ, we look for skill, and we look for character. Those are the things that we feel are keys to success of our hockey club and will bring us championships and provide us lots of success on the ice.
I think character is something that I look at the NHL is becoming very important. You look at a guy like Ty Dellandrea, who plays for Flint. I mean, people are saying the reason he went 13th overall to the Dallas Stars because the kid is just oozing with character. How important do you think character is at the pro level? But you see it also at the in the OHL. Maybe some players, they're maturing, they won't have that character yet, but I'm sure people they'll be kind of monitored throughout the year. Like, what do you think about character?
Well, Ty Dellandrea has skill and compete along with character. He has more than just one attribute. So when you throw all those into the mix, you got yourself a heck of a hockey player. That's why he went in the first round. There's a lot of players that have gone in the first round in the National Hockey League that can't crack a lineup because of their antics, because of their conduct away from the rink, because of their mentality of selfish mentality of how they play the game on the ice. And guys, you can have all the skill in the world, and I don't want to mention any names, but there's guys today that have tremendous skill that are playing in the American Hockey League because they just will not break themselves of bad habits and play a team game, or they can't conform to structure off the ice. Okay, we got meetings at 10 o'clock. That means you show up at 9:50. You don't show up at 10:01. You're late. And it's not about those individuals, because guess what? There's lots of players out there that are willing to fill that role and take that spot. So, I think that character plays a tremendous role in success of a hockey team. And let's face it, if you have a bad apple in that dressing room, it can spread pretty quickly. So character is definitely one of the big attributes that we look for in players.
When I asked you about some things that you've seen that have changed in the past couple of years of hockey, you mentioned the skill set is amazing, second to none. Players are getting better, bigger, faster, stronger. I talk to a lot of people. We talk about the players and the generational talents coming in every year. And it's like every year, there's it used to be every 3-4 years there's a player like Tavares and Stamkos, but now it just seems like there's a generational player every year or every second year. Do you think that those type of things are gonna make hockey explode in the States and just become a bigger phenomenon in terms of a sport?
Well, I think anytime you have exciting players to watch, like, you got McDavid, and we were fortunate enough to have Tavares in our lineup, as we did many other players, Lindros and Orr and Tilson, and the list goes on and on. So when you have those kind of exciting players, people want to come and watch, right? They don't want to watch dump and chase hockey. They don't want to watch 1-1 hockey games where you have 10 shots on net. They want to see exciting hockey back and forth. They want to see physical hockey. They want to see plays. They want to see goals. And if you've got those exciting players, they bring you out of your seats, and young kids want to emulate those players. And I think you're starting to see it now in the U.S. More and more, especially in the southern states. And I think Wayne Gretzky started that trend, when he went to L.A. And now you're seeing it with Stamkos, and you're seeing it with Matthews from Arizona, and all these great players. So 100%, it definitely adds to branding, hockey, and getting more and more kids involved. We just have to do a better job, I think, at the grassroots levels to make it more affordable for families that can't afford it.
Absolutely. What I really like is, as the owner of the Oshawa Generals, what I see is you're very active on social media, and it seems that, social media is, a tool that's growing every day, and, players are using it, fans are using it. Talk a little bit about the role of social media in the organization of the Oshawa Generals, and what do you personally think about social media in the game of hockey?
Well, I think it's great. It can be a two-headed monster. We educate and monitor all our players' Twitter, Instagram sites, because you make one bad press of that button, people don't have a hard time forgetting it, right? And the problem with the public, it's perceived differently, and you got to be very, very careful. I mean, I have, to be honest with you, I kind of pick and choose the social media sites I follow. I follow your site because it's it's well informed, and it's not opinionated. And I think you're respectful of the players, because these kids are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And to be honest with you, they look like gladiators on the ice when they have their equipment. But people don't understand. These are kids. At the end of the day, like, if you have kids of your own, you understand, and you know what it's like going up sometimes. These kids do make mistakes, and we don't call it mistakes. You make an error. It's learning, right? It's wins, and if you lose, it's about learning. You learn up from that loss, and you try to figure it out and get better for it the next day. So we are active on social media in trying to promote positivity and awareness. I have some challenges with some of these pay for sites, sites that you have to pay for, these scouting sites. And I tell parents at the end of the day, they're great. They tell you everything you want to hear about your boy. But the reality is that they can overstep their boundaries a lot of times, and it's unfortunate, because they got to remember there's kids with feelings on the other side of that. And I always tell people that the best scouts are the ones that are along the glass, that you see and you don't hear of, and they're the ones that'll critique and give you the best advice and all that. But I've been in meetings with our scouting staff, and I know how meticulous they are in trying to pick apart a player, or good and bad. But social media can be great, and I think it's great for getting messages out there. I just wish some people would just take a step back, and probably they shouldn't be on social media, because I think it's a voice for them to be and they hide behind these handles that they can say whatever they want and not be held accountable. That's the thing that I think in general bothers. And you can see even, and I don't want to bring in politics of it, but you can see, you got a president of the United States basically, can't control himself, right? And every time you say something or do something on social media, you got to try to think that, does it impact anybody in a negative way? Those are the things that for me bother me, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's part of today's society, and you have to have thick skin. So we try to educate our players on making sure whatever you retweet or tweet, you think before you hit that send button, because there are people out there that are just rude and ignorant, and no matter what you do, they're just going to shit on you regardless.
Well, the World Junior Hockey Championship has become a monster of a tournament. It's one of the best sporting events of the year, and people forget sometimes that there are kids playing in this tournament, and some of the stuff, Rocco, that was tweeted throughout that tournament in the past couple of years towards players in that tournament, it's ridiculous.
Well, I think if you look at the Maple Leafs this year, Gardner, poor guy, had a tough game. And, they had a GoFundMe page to buy out his contract. They had all kinds of nasty things. I mean, at the end of the day, people make mistakes. It's part of hockey, guys. It's part of the game. Goals go in because somebody, has a line change or bad line change or something happens. At the end of the day, these kids or these players aren't looking to make these mistakes. They want to win. They want to win badly. And the way they humiliated this man on social media, people thought it was funny. I tell you, it was sad. And people have to put themselves, I just say to people, before you send out a tweet about something that you feel is going to be a negative, put yourself in that situation where what if that was your son or your daughter, right? And I felt bad for Gardner, and people can sit there and say, he gets paid a lot of money, this and that. Yeah, he gets paid a lot of money, but not to put up with that crap, right? So that's the unfortunate part of social media, and you're absolutely right. The people forget that these are kids. So that's the part that you wish that hopefully people will, social media will change a little bit and refine itself.
No, for sure. I understand that. It's a double-edged sword, social media. But Rocco, I think we'll wrap up. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and chat hockey. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem.
It's, usually we say, the floor is yours to plug away. I'll say the ice is yours to plug away. Closing remarks, anything you want to say?
No, I appreciate it. Listen, keep doing a great job, positive with delivering these messages. And it's great. You know what? You're helping to grow our brand, and we appreciate it. And we're hoping to bring some excitement to the city of Oshawa again, and hopefully another championship and a Memorial Cup to our great fans.
Perfect. Well, seriously, Rocco, thank you so much, and all the best to the Oshawa Generals to start the season and throughout the whole year.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll see you around the rinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for past episodes, for the video episodes, for audio episodes, Spotify, iTunes. Until next time, this is Rocco Tullio and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.